Hey all, this is Paul Carter, and this is my Module 8, Legal Aspects of Teacher Evaluation. So the first thing I'm going to go over are the four articles that we were given and kind of summarize them real quick so that I can apply that information to some of the questions, the guiding questions that we were asked at the end. Article 1 was titled Teacher Evaluation Heads to Courts. This one was actually pretty useful. It was an overview of various lawsuits by teacher unions against the school districts. And the beginning was just a quick overview of them. And then it gave you this awesome chart that went over a bunch of different lawsuits and the outcomes of them. These lawsuits challenged different things. In New Mexico and Louisiana, they challenged how the new systems were put into place, saying that they did not do this legally or ethically. In Tennessee and Florida, they were challenging the fact of VAMs and the use of student test scores in those evaluations, and can you fire and dismiss teachers because student scores were a little bit too low. And then lastly, the basic fairness in evaluations without considering student poverty in New York, saying, hey, students of lower income, you can't fire me or dismiss me as a teacher because of the fact that the students were at a lower poverty rate. Article 2 was titled Teacher Evaluation and Issue Overview. In, in general, it talked about four large factors of why this was even taking place. What is the issue? If you're creating a new model, what four things or four large factors should be there? And what are the four large factors that are causing this to even happen? The first is just new research on teacher quality. A lot of research is coming out in the past, I would say, since most articles seem to be starting around like 2010. So the past 5 to 10 years, so people are realizing how important it is for student growth to have a quality teacher in the classroom. And so because of this, there's a lot of interest in boosting teacher effectiveness. Not only do they need to be a good teacher, the good teacher, a definition of it is the effective. And what are the parameters for being an effective teacher? Because there's more than just student test scores. The third was efforts to revamp state laws and evaluations. So now that states are trying to create laws that districts then have to follow when they are doing teacher evaluations, what these evaluations will include or not include. And so that is a lot of the issues that are there. And then lastly, political pressure to dismiss poor performing teachers. We can't just continuously have poor teachers in our schools. Even my district itself has struggled, I think, at times dismissing poor teachers, and I feel like there's finally political pressure to do so. And they've actually, in the past year, dismissed a handful of teachers that were just evaluating year after year poorly, and they weren't doing much about it. And so I think the political pressure is actually a good thing. Article 3 is overview of effectively reforming teacher evaluations. So there's 6 key principles that must serve as a guiding force for this reform. You can't just have reform for the sake of reform. There needs to be a guiding force, and there's 6 of them. The first is safe and open collaboration is necessary. Teachers need to be involved in the discussions. Districts, district level heads, as well as the state. There needs to be safe and open collaboration ongoing as these reforms are made. Measures of teacher performance are most helpful and meaningful when they are based on multiple ratings and clear teaching standards. You can't just have them based on student test scores. They have to be based on quite a few different things for it to be meaningful and accurate data based on what the teacher's effectiveness is. And then evaluation systems must be integrated. Yes, there has to be some way to actually evaluate them, whether that is a rubric, scores, how are they being scored. They have to be in there. If you don't have an evaluation system, it's very hard to effectively and fairly evaluate all teachers the same way. The key principles 4 through 6, validating evaluation measures are essential. You can't have an evaluation model be effective unless it is validated many times over. Do multiple different people evaluate the same person the same way? Is this a valid measure at all? Teachers' input in determining performance and learning outcomes should be part of the evaluation process. You can't just evaluate a teacher without them having a say or having an ongoing conversation with them. Because if you talk to the teacher, they may let you know of specific reasons of why they do something that might play a very large part in their evaluation. So the teacher's input definitely has to be in the evaluations. And then lastly, assessment and evaluation systems need to be jointly created or designed with local teacher association involvement. So right now in my district, we have KNEA, but the way that teachers are assessed needs to be agreed upon by the teachers union, as the district and at the state level. Article 4 is teacher evaluations, measures, and systems. So this is an overview of research findings and considerations for designing and implementing meaningful teacher evaluations. So the research on these teacher evaluation systems, we know that there needs to be creation of linked and integrated systems. You can't just use one. There has to be various measures. Using validated evaluation measures, they have to be, as I mentioned before, they have to be able to be recreated by various people. They need to be valid measures, not just one person's opinion. And it needs to establish credibility. It needs to be used over and over, and teachers need to see, hey, this actually is effective and it needs to work. So then there's research on teacher evaluations, the actual instruments that they're being used. Well, these things need to be included scoring and training. So if they don't score well on something, there needs to be specific training for that teacher in the area. Generalization and extrapolation. So or generalization ability. So this needs to be generalized that it is over everybody. It needs to be more general. And be able to be discussed. Implication and interpretation, what are the implications of these studies, are measurement systems, and then how is it easy to interpret your data or your information that you're collecting. So those 4 articles introduce us into these guiding topics that we were supposed to talk about. So this is the teacher evaluation system in the Spring Hill School District. I know this is a little bit lengthy on words here on the left, but I want to go through it in detail. So we have frequency. When you are hired, you are under observation for your first 3 years, twice a year for the first 3 years, and then you are put on a cycle of every 4 or 5 years. And then if anything happens, they can immediately bump you up and put you on the cycle, which has happened recently. So that's the frequency. The evaluators are your principals. They normally assign one principal to you that is in charge of your evaluations. They're the one that are conducting them. In my opinion, this opens the door for a lot of bias, but that is how my district does it. So step 1 is a pre-meeting. You sit down with your evaluator, your administrator, and he explains what he'll be doing, showing you the rubric and all the different questions he'll be answering about your performance. Step 2, you set up a formal observation. That means it is scheduled. You know exactly when your administrator is walking in the door to watch you. He fills out the observation form. Then step 3 is you have a meeting with that administrator and they explain what you did well, what you can improve on. Because then step 4 is an informal observation. They will just walk in your door, you do not know when, and they will come in, sit down, and evaluate you without you knowing, which is, to me, extremely effective. So then you have a meeting about that. And then if you are a new teacher, years 1 through 3, you repeat steps 2 through 5 again. But if you are not, that means you're just coming up every 4 or 5 years. Then you actually only do this observation cycle one time instead of once in the fall and once in the spring. You just have it due by the spring the one time. Once all these observations are done, you do have a final meeting with your administrator where you go over all of it. He presents you his information, what he scored you as, and then if you do agree, you have the opportunity. You both sign the evaluation, so then he can turn it in to the district levels. So teacher recourse for evaluation. So what can teachers, or what can they do if they feel that their evaluation is inaccurate, and what can they do if they feel they're unjustly being let go? Well, on these evaluations, there is opportunity for write-in comments. If you disagree with anything the evaluator has put in your performance evaluation, you are able to write in that you disagree. I have done this one time because he said that my district or my objectives weren't posted, and then I had lots of proof that he was. He just wasn't looking in the right spot. because he had missed the first 5 minutes of my lesson when I had taught my students the objective for the day. You can ask for a reevaluation, saying you completely disagree. Can we just do this over again? If they say no, you can bring it to human resources attention, and they can actually come and perform some observations. If needed, you can involve KNEA, the teachers union, and then you can flat out refuse to sign saying I disagree until changes are made to it. So there's a legal case that I focused on. This one took place in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The foundation of this case was the teacher. And the teachers it was a lawsuit against the district because they are using value-added models. The VAM, which I mentioned earlier, scored for teacher evaluation. It was heavily based on student performance and student test scores, and this is extremely unfair. And so the teachers felt that their evaluations were being unfair, as many teachers were being let go because they were deemed not ineffective. And so the district had said, hey, we're going to fire 85% of the ineffective teachers. And so they obviously fought against this. The results of the case was State District Judge David K. Thompson ruled in favor of the teachers, saying that their VAM scores were not accurate. And the district couldn't fire teachers based on being ineffective unless they could prove their evaluation model was reliable, valid, fair, and uniform across the board. So I found this very much on topic for what we were learning in this module. So my reflection, how am I going to ensure I'm following legal issues as a future administrator? Well, ensuring that I'm following legal issues associated with the evaluation process. I need to know the federal, state, and district laws and policies. I need to stay current on related issues. If I don't know what's going on, I'm just kind of opening up myself for making mistakes and having legal action taken against me and or my district. So I feel like those are definitely the two most obvious but most essential things that I must understand as a future administrator. So the resources that I used were the 4 resources provided in this course, as well as the victory in the court consequences attached to VAM suspended throughout New Mexico. That is the resource that I found and used for my legal case that I brought to light. I found this module to be very effective in teaching me what can happen if things aren't followed well with teacher evaluation. So I definitely need to know the district, the state, and the federal policies and laws so that I can apply them in my future school.